And guess what? Like, even in one policy change, I saved myself $2,500 in making some changes that literally took me less than a minute to work through with my insurance agent. Welcome to episode 36 of the Moms Making Dough podcast. And today, our topic is going to be how to go from financially frazzled to financially fierce. Okay, where is this topic coming from? So, I love to cover some of the things that I get for questions regarding the podcast. But today's episode is really just kind of meeting me where I'm at. It's end of summer. Last week was my daughter's first week, full week of school. And man, did I struggle to just get back into a routine that makes me feel productive with all these little distractions. And I also really, I talked about last week the financial Friday check in. And I did that check in with myself after I recorded last week's episode. And I was like, man, I am just really feeling this anxious overwhelm when it comes to my finances kind of start to creep in and kind of go back into that scarcity mentality and um wanting to be so much more abundant in my thinking. So it really got me thinking is that I'm going to do a real and raw episode because I am sure someone can relate to this when you start to feel like that financial frazzle or like I said that chaos, that overwhelm, maybe it's an unexpected thing, but I had a bunch of different things that happened last week that just like I was like, "Oh shit, that needs to be taken care of," and I didn't plan for that. And then there were many things I was working on, such as like if you filed a tax extension, if you're a business owner, that's September 15th. And I had a couple things because I had a sale of business that we had done an extension for. And then there was like a couple things that like came back that we were like, hey, what do we do here? And it just left me in this place where I was so in my head and not feeling centered in my heart when it came to my money and feeling aligned with it. So today's episode, I wanted to talk about how to like lead like a lioness, I'm calling it, because it brought me back to when I thought about this is like I feel frazzled was how I explained it, like felt in when I sat down on my financial Friday. And I was like, I want to feel more fierce. I want to feel more courageous. I want to feel more confident. And this show is a work in progress. I'm a work in progress, and chances are you are as well. So, especially if you are wanting to go from feeling frazzled to financially fierce, this episode is going to be for you. So, how to lead like a lioness. I want to kind of backtrack a little bit about how this theme came up. And so I was thinking about how a couple years ago, I want to say it was probably 2018, my husband and I were down in Orlando, not my favorite place, but a big message in it that I'm going to share. And we were in Orlando for a conference, business conference, and it was just him and I at this point. I don't think we had any staff with us. No, just him and I for I believe it was a marketing conference. And when we were there, we decided we were going to do a park one day. And we decided we were going to do Animal Kingdom. I have no idea why, but we went on the safari at Animal Kingdom. And I remember when we came around to the lions, one of the things I was at this very vulnerable place in my life at that point in every capacity. And when we got to the lions, I remember, like you're sitting on kind of like an open air uh, Jeep-ish, and they have made it so that there's like it's in the Serengeti. It is really actually really freaking cool and pretty damn close to I feel like without going to Africa, what, like kind of what a safari is. Some days you see animals, some days you don't. It's a reservation for them. They're all well taken care of. And they're all getting to be in their nature. And so I remember getting around to the lions and we saw the male lion and then the female lion came out. And when the lioness, and when she came out, I remember the person that's narrating the Jeep ride. And he was sharing facts about lions. And one of the things that he shared about, he's like, most people think that the male lion is the hunter. And that's actually very far, it's actually reverse. The lioness is actually the person that, or the animal that is responsible for the hunting for their family, because she leaves the male at home. Now the male still hunts, right? But it is her role in her family pack to provide food for her family, and the male typically stays back to protect the pride. And I thought about this as like, I remember Ryan looking at me and he's like, "What is going on? You are like," I was tearing up because I was at this place in my life where I was feeling so disempowered about my productivity, my ability to produce. I just was in a very big period of my life where I needed to make some pivots, which I did. I would say 2018 was probably one of the rock bottom years, um, in not only my personal life, but also like my marriage. And I think in business, we were doing okay, but we definitely weren't growing. And we had bought another practice, and I had basically divided myself. And I was in this other location for a while. Mainly, my husband was working in our other location, and I just could feel so deeply that something needed to shift. But I was so fearful of what that actually meant, not only from a financial perspective, but just from a personal one. So I got really like into kind of studying lionesses. And now knowing that she is typically actually the primary hunter in her family, I certainly don't want to be the primary hunter in my family. But I sure as hell like being able to produce when and if I would want to. And I feel like if you are a regular listener to this show, you are a mom making dough and you probably have the same desire, is that you want to do something that you feel purposeful with, you feel productive with, and you're able to really provide and protect your pride. And I want you to think about too, if you've ever watched a lion hunt or even just a general cat, right? They are focused. They are very strategic. They are fierce. And when she moves, it is not frantic. It is very purposeful, with the intention of either protecting and or providing for her pride. So I want you to pay attention to this episode, because as I completed my Financial Friday last week, my check-in with myself on my both our business and our personal finances, I was really feeling like, hey, you need to get back into your lioness energy. When money starts to feel frazzled and it starts to feel chaotic and when it starts to feel overwhelming, what are some of the steps that I take that I want to share with you today? Some of them may work for you, some of them you may have do already, some of them you may have never thought of, but I wanted to just give you some food for thought to create some simple systems that can help work with you instead of against you. And then you can lead your finances with confidence, with much more strategy, and most of all, with some courage, because managing your money is always going to be it is a necessary task, regardless of where you are in your life, whether you have a lot of it or you have a little of it. And it takes courage, it takes confidence, and it also does, like I said, take a plan. So, this is where I started to think about, like, how do I separate my facts from feelings? And I started to download just like, hey, what are some of my financial facts at this moment? And then I started to look at, like, not so much changing the behavior, but what are some habits that maybe need to shift? And I love to always come back to this example of like just thinking about like even when your health when it comes to your health, right? And recently, like I'm even doing a challenge with my trainer right now, and when we were talking, she's like, you have a lot of basics, and I do have a lot of basics. So like our first week we focused on getting 40 grams of protein at 3 meals a day. Now that is a habit that is my lifestyle. Like, I don't even have to think to do that. But you'll be so shocked to hear the one that I struggled with, that I was very upfront with her, is my consistency in getting enough water. And, that was the second thing we had to focus on that first week was we had to get 100 ounces of water a day. And it made me think about how it's like these simple shifts. And also, what I had realized is that I can really only focus on one simple shift at a time. So, in today's episode, my hope is that you will just maybe hear one simple shift that's an idea or bring some awareness, not even a habit, that maybe you can start to shift when you get into this state, like I was last Friday, just feeling financially frazzled. And how do I get back and turn that, right that ship? How do I get back in that lioness energy so that I'm hunting down clarity and feeling productive with my financial decisions, especially when they come not only to me personally, but to my pride. Um, and I want you to think about too, back to the lioness hunting, is that like she does not chase her prey, right? And let's look at the metaphor of that prey being money. Like I said, she sits, she waits, she stalks, and she waits for the moment where she can strike, that she will set her up for the best success, that she will be able to bring her prey back valiantly to her pride. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that we want to do, and that I would want to do, because there are some of the things that I'm doing right now because I am in a high spending season. I've made some asset purchases, and I'm having to do some improvements. I'm having to do some maintenance on my personal house, things that like I always put money aside for. But then there's random things like, don't get me started, but this is so friggin' random, but I'm going to share it anyways. So, like, I have a fucking squirrel. Excuse my French. God, I should not say that, um, in my shed, that's living in my shed, and I found out last week that my pest company cannot handle it because it's wildlife and it needs to be trapped. 1,000 freaking dollars to trap a squirrel. So, I'm waiting to find out if there's I'm getting another estimate on it. But just like I was thinking about, like, this is how, like, this was the straw that broke the camel's back for me last week. I was like, "Dude, $1,000 for a catching of a squirrel." So, it was like those little things, and no joke, I thought about, like, especially when it comes to ADHD, like, that squirrel mentality of, like, "Oh my god, squirrel!" Like, you're distracted by something else, and I was, like, sat down for my financial Friday after the squirrel lady left, and I just thought to myself, I was like, "Dude, this is just another, like, physical squirrel that's distracting me and keeping me from focusing on the things that really matter, that are in not only alignment with what I want for my finances, but also just what is it teaching me." So I'm going to talk a little bit about the habits on how I kind of got myself back on track to feeling from that frazzled to a little bit more fierce about my money, and just the direction I'm going in as we get to, like I said, we're going to be at the end of the year before we know it. So, a lioness never panics. And like I said about the squirrel, I was kind of like, and then I calm myself down. She just plans her next move and what has to happen. So, my next move on the squirrel is another estimate because I have no idea if that is a good price or not. I'm about to ask, like my town Facebook page and find out. So I want you to think about stepping into lioness leadership and swapping out scarcity for strategy and hitting pause before you panic, because that will lead to ultimately clarity before chaos. Because if you do not sit down and get right with your facts, then your feelings are going to take over and you are going to start to make a decision out of feeling instead of actually with facts and evidence to support that, that might lead you to a feeling of not so confident in the future. So we want to really interrupt that pattern. And so here's some of the things that I thought about where I wanted to when I wanted to write, like I said, my energy around my finances last week when it was feeling frazzled. Number 1 is where am I focusing my energy? So I need first of all, like my first step here is like looking at separating the different like rocks or different blocks of things that I need to manage. So like separating like, hey, what needs to happen for my personal stuff, right? So right now, personal is actually the squirrel, right? It is different. There are things that have to happen in my personal life and or home life. Then there's business stuff. We need to hire someone new, so we needed to place an ad. Then we're gonna have to account for payroll, what's that person's going to add to our overhead every month. So there's that block of like, there's the business, and then there's like different. Then there's now I have multiple properties. So what has to happen on one property? What has to happen with another? And basically doing the biggest brain dump I could of all of these things that are taking up mental mind share just because I haven't put them down all in one place. So just kind of like I said, taking stock and putting each into each category. So if you have a business, what are the primary financial things that are A, feeling chaotic? And because the goal is to take them from chaos to move them towards clarity by the end of this exercise. And then the next thing is like I kind of look at them as financial piles. And here's another thing too, is that not only do I mean like physically write down this list or type it out on your computer, I want you to get it out of your brain and onto a piece, something written out. Because what happens is when you start to download it, then you start to be able to put all of this stuff in order, even though it doesn't feel like you are. And then there's the actual physical act of organizing. So one of the things for me too is that like I started noticing is that like I had this pile of receipts and they needed to be scanned. And we're gonna get to that. And but I had a pile of like here's groceries was mixed in with business receipts. And then I had just completed like all these documentation for my taxes. So for me, I was like, holy shit. I was like, dude, I need to separate them. So like very, very this is definitely not rocket scientist, but I just kind of thought about Marie Kondo, like her the magical art of tidying. And I was like, listen, I need to be a physical, like, I need to physically see something for me to be able to sort these. Some people are not like that, but I am one person. I would rather just throw it all in one pile and then get to it eventually. However, I know that that system doesn't work for me. So I literally went to the dollar store and I got 3 different containers and I labeled them and I labeled these are business receipts for the practice. These are business receipts for 114 Cottage Road. These are business receipts for my other rental property. These are business receipts for this. And the plan is that on my financial Friday, once I did this as the task, the habit, now I scheduled when will I go through and actually scan those receipts. Now, here's what I'm trying to really take it up a notch after doing the Financial Friday. I realized is that in addition, I was like, there's so many tools out there now that you can like really like scan receipts as you go. And I really have to get better about this, and maybe you do too, of just like the touch it once method of like, hey, don't waste your time and energy. Like, don't put it away if you could actually just get it done right now. If I could take 5 minutes while I'm right at lunch and scan all of the receipts from the previous day or the previous week, why would I not do that? And why would I let it build up to an hour or 2 hour long project when things get missed? Just like if you do your taxes backwards, like if you don't have your books up to date, then you are missing money. You're leaving money on the table because there's things you forget. Or if you're like me, you randomly remember random amounts and you're like, oh, yeah, that's what this was for. But like, why would you want to do that in arrears if you could be proactive about it? That's reactive versus proactive. And if we want to be more confident with our money, then the more proactive we can get, the less react time we'll spend in reactivity, which is just a waste of time in most scenarios. And then the next thing is that, like, thinking about, I also started batching themes for my money. So if Um, the step number 1 is kinda like where to focus your energy is, like, just getting an organized system, whatever that is for you. I just kinda talked a little bit about the one that I'm working on myself is just, like, literally separating and touching it once into the separation instead of making this giant overwhelming pile. This is the next part is that, like, batching themes for your finances. So, strategic hunts, right? Um, for example, maybe it is time to do your taxes. So maybe your focus this month is just prepping all your taxes stuff. Maybe it is, I'm in this month right now, insurance month, where almost all of my personal life insurance, my our disability insurance, some of our umbrella policies, all of these random insurance, like not random, lots of insurance we have, they start to come due. So, like, one of the things that I did on insurance month that I set for my financial Friday last week is that, like, I have to make sure that the beneficiaries are still correct. I have a trust, so I have to make sure that they are all put into the trust. So I had to contact my agent. Here's the thing, this was such a simple step, but it has been something that's been on my list for weeks. And it wasn't until I themed this month of like, hey, you are going to take care of all your insurance stuff this month. I also made some changes to some of my policies and just did like a general overview of all my policies. And guess what? Like, even in one policy I saved myself $2,500 in making some changes that literally took me less than a minute to work through with my insurance agent. And I had one form to sign. So these theme months don't have to be big, but big topics. Some of them might be, and some of them might require that you take more steps. Like, it might take you a full month to get something done. I'm about to go into that one. My next month, now that all the insurance is done, is estate planning month. So, like, I need to make sure, is my trust updated? Is everything moved into it the way that it needs to be? So these are my start, like, the themes of the month really help me get organized, where I feel like I have a focus and a task that I can complete in my finances. And then once I have those 2 things done is like more of like a simple system on what I can organize that is feeling disorganized for me, batching and themes. I can also assign tasks to energy levels. So, for example, let's say I know that, like, hey, this is a big project. For example, taxes. For most people, that's a big project if you own a business specifically. So, like, for example, this year I had 5 returns, including one sale of a business. So, 5 different elements of my return. So that is a multi-step project that I have been working on for months, but I had to break down into smaller chunks, knowing that they were more intensive when it came to time. But then there's other things that are bite-sized that I put on my schedule. And this is something I do on my financial Fridays. I look at, like, hey, what are the steps for me to do this project that need to be put on my schedule? Now, bite size, an example would be what I just covered, which is would be insurance, right? Like, I was like, call your agent and ask them this. I have one more person, different agent for our house insurance that I need to call because sometimes, like I said, a lot of this stuff's on auto pay and we can actually shop it. We can actually do a little bit better. Like I said, one shift to 2 different policies I had was a $2,500 savings for me. So just kind of really thinking about that kind of stuff. And then I start to look at, like, hey, what tools can I use to make my finances feel a little bit more fierce instead of frazzled? So things like I already talked about receipt scanners, right? Like QuickBooks, Ramp. I use Dext, Dext. It used to be called Receipt Bank for our businesses. Which, I mean, man, talk about, like, freaking awesome. It's like you take a picture of the receipt, it uploads it, and then it starts categorizing it for it. Now, obviously, I have a bookkeeper, so he really does that. But man, I have all of this data to support what he is doing. Um, And I can also this is huge because you start to catch little things that they might have put into your chart of accounts that actually might not be correct. So, and not because they did it on purpose, just because they don't understand what that is for, or it's something that you don't typically have in your expenses. So, one of the things that I'm starting to look at, and I wrote down from my Financial Friday was one password, right? Like, so I have a one password account, and I have one where I can share it with all my family. But I just started to realize that there is quite a few, all these different accounts, especially on this new property we bought, that Ryan, my husband, does not have access to because he doesn't have passwords for them. So making sure I update those one password. That's probably going to be next month's tasks, right? Is like uploading all my passwords. I'm doing the same thing with my mom. My mom's 77 years old. Next month, that's one of our financial projects, is that like just making sure that I have access. Not only am I on all of her accounts, but am I able to access them without her help, without looking at a paper statement like she would prefer, but like using some technology to simplify not only my life, but hers as well, and helping her do that. And then this is something that's kind of fun. Um, but this the most ironic part is this: my daughter Lily told me about this when I was in the grocery store the other day. And I'm in the grocery store, I'm checking out, and she's like, "Hey," the cashier asked me if I wanted a receipt. And I said, "Of course, yes." So she gives me a receipt. Now, there's a lot of people that don't even take receipts anymore. I am not one of those people. I like the receipt for everything. And so she's like, "Are you gonna put that in Fetch?" And I was like, "Well, what's Fetch?" I'm like, "She's 4 years old." And I said, "Well," she's like, "You get, rewards for, like, when you scan receipts." And I was like, "How do you know about this?" And even the cashier, she was like, "She's right." Um, and she's like, "I can't believe she knows that." And I was like, so apparently she went grocery shopping with my aunt, and my aunt has this app on her phone, and it has like a because it's called Fetch, it has a dog as the logo. So talk about branding. My daughter Lily liked watching the dog like logo as my aunt put the receipt, her grocery shopping receipt in. And so I Googled it. I looked up Fetch, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is actually pretty awesome. I definitely should be using this." And it also makes it fun. Now, come to find out there's lots of apps like this. Like, I looked up another one called, like, Receipt Hog, and, like, all of these apps that allow you to reward yourself for money you are already spending. Now, hopefully it's not money you're overspending, but like money that like you are going to spend anyways at the grocery store, at the gas station, all that kind of stuff. Why would you not get points? Staples, oh my God, I'm like a huge Staples reward person. So, and here's what I think: who doesn't like free money? But this was a great reminder of that small wins can give you momentum. So like even getting a little bit more organized with, like I said, scanning receipts. That is my focus too, is like from this meeting, this sit down with myself, this financial date, I realized I was like, holy shit, there's a lot of little things that I could be doing on a more consistent basis, just like drinking water, that will lead to a result over time. And I would rather have more consistency than intensity any day of the week, especially when it comes to my finances. So, if I want to be in alignment with that consistency, that means I need a plan of action, just like that lioness would go and hunt that prey. So, um, here is the financially like a recap of the financially fierce checklist. It's going to be available for a free download with this episode. It will be in the link. And the step number one is going to be automate what you can, right? So, like, just automate as much as possible. That might mean you might need to take a couple hours to set up all that automation. I did that this week with a couple different accounts that weren't set up on auto pay because they're newer accounts for me. And literally, like an hour worth of work saves me so much time over the thing. And I think I set up 4 or 5 auto pays, like everything from our internet bill to our utilities to all of these things for the newer property we just bought. And then the next thing is like find a simple organizing system for you. The first thing that would say is scan your house, your environment, and look around, and or if this is in your business, scan your office and just see like where is stuff accumulating that is leading me to overwhelm and what could I create for a system. Like I said, I went to the dollar store and I just got 3 bins and I labeled them so that I could start to separate the receipts, and then I'll start doing the next step, which is like batch receipts and documents so that if you scan them, you can scan them at once. If you don't scan them, that's fine too. And then set a monthly theme calendar. Like, what is going to be your financial focus this month? Is it going to be insurance month? Is it estate planning month? Is it tax month? Is it passwords month? Is it automated accounts month? Whatever it is. And then start to set up your financial Friday or your financial date with yourself every week with the goal of having consistency. And actually, next week's episode will be on, I will break down the exact format I use for my financial Fridays because I have got a lot of questions and a lot of interest in having like finding out like what do I do for both my personal and my business finances, because in less than an hour I check in on both. And that's in, like I said, with myself, my financial Friday date. So this is um, something that, like I said, super simple, real, raw, and relevant for me right now because I was feeling so frazzled. And hopefully, it's something that you will start to put you back in to your lioness energy so that you feel like you are moving with purpose to provide for your pride instead of feeling frantic and frazzled. Thank you so much for joining us on Mums Making Dough. We'll see you next week on, and as always, if you can rate, review, and subscribe, that's how we grow, and give us some insights on stuff you would like us to cover on this podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day. See you next week.